I'm scared. I need to suck it up and do it. Just do it. Stop psyching yourself out. I have a feeling I am going to sit here for the next 30 minutes just trying to talk myself into doing it if I don't just do it. So let's do it. Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Unplanned podcast. This is, I'm not gonna lie, absolutely terrifying, and I partly don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it anyway. There's a dog barking, the studio is messy, I haven't really figured out what I'm doing with this video angle, but we're just going to do it. We're just going to start somewhere and figure it out as we go. So this podcast may look different over time, but you know, as long as I start, as long as this gets me started. So let's start with a little introduction. My name is Jess. I live in Sydney, Australia, and I don't know what to say. I run a business called Planned by Jysla, and I make studio vlogs on YouTube, and I make minimal stickers and printables to help you get organized and have fun doing it. That's basically me. My roots were as a photographer. That's how I got started. And I guess I want to talk about the name behind the podcast. So it does sound really unoriginal, like I just piggybacked off my current name. But I actually had a different idea for this podcast. I originally wanted to call the podcast WIP, Work in Progress. And I was really set on that idea because I thought it perfectly captured the whole idea that life is a journey, discovering ourselves is a journey, and business is a journey. We're all a work in progress. And I really wanted that to be the message of the podcast. But I did my due diligence. Why can't I say that? My due diligence before setting up the podcast to make sure no one else had that name. Lo and behold, it's a really common podcast name. So it wouldn't be really smart for me to go down that route. So I did a little brainstorming session with Kevin, my partner. We came up with some really terrible ideas. And then as a joke, I said, what about Unplanned by Jysla? And obviously that's what I went with. I do really like the name because it still represents the fact that not everything goes according to plan, and that's exactly how my podcast setup went. I had a very clear idea in mind, but it didn't work out as I had initially planned. And I think it's a really good reminder for myself, especially because I am a recovering perfectionist. I plan everything to the tiny little detail when it comes to holidays, going out, anything. Like when I'm setting something up for the first time, if I'm doing something for the first time, if I'm going to a new restaurant for the first time, I still do look at the menu and look at all of the food that they have, so I have an idea of what I want to order before I get there. And one, it's a way for me to reduce a little bit of my social anxiety when I go out. So not everything is kind of new and scary. So I have something under my control. But at the same time, it's a good reminder to leave a little bit of room for flexibility because plans rarely go as planned. And I think trying to stick to this really set plan that you've created for yourself only sets yourself up for disappointment and frustration because you have an idea, not even an idea, you might be very sure of how you want things to look and turn out. And when it doesn't turn out that way, because that's life, you'll get really upset with yourself or really disappointed and miss out on the opportunity for things to work out even better. So even though I didn't get the podcast name that I wanted, I'm really happy with this new podcast name, and I think it worked out better. So I'm happy with that. It was very fortuitous. You will learn on this podcast that when I say words in a weird way, it's because I'm quite good at spelling, but I'm not so good at pronouncing words. And that's just my podcast journey. My patrons will know that I struggle with saying words in the correct context. I have a problem with pronunciation, but that's okay. This is going to be a really casual podcast. I want it to be fun, and I want it to be like a little midweek pep talk, kind of uplifting reminder thing. So thank you for joining me for this first very unplanned, unprepared podcast. It's going to be a weekly podcast. Well, I'm going to attempt to make it a weekly podcast. So every week I'm going to bring you a new theme. I'm going to open up my inbox to answer your questions. If you're watching on YouTube, I've included the email below if you want to send me any questions. I've included my Instagram account for this podcast, so you can DM me on there. But if you're listening through the podcast app, whatever app you're using, you can email me at podcast at, are you ready for it? Planned by Jysla, JYSLA.com. And I'll make sure to put it in the description notes box thing as well, because whenever someone reads something out to me, it completely goes out the other ear. I cannot retain information when someone has verbally communicated it to me, because there's just too much going on up there. So I'm aiming for these podcasts to be 5 to 10 minutes. It's probably going to be a 10-minute podcast, which is still, I hope, short and snappy to help get you through the week. So this was a bit of an intro. Didn't really have much time to go deeper into any of the topics, but that was just the story behind setting up this podcast, and just a reminder that things don't always go as planned, and I think it's healthy to expect that, to allow for some flexibility in your plans and your goals, whatever it is that you're planning. Even now when I'm doing my New Year's resolutions, yes, I am one of those people, and goals for the month or goals for the week or goals for the day, I allow for other things to happen. I know that a lot of things in life and business are super unpredictable, and I know myself, I tend to get very disappointed and frustrated when things don't work out as I planned. So I'm learning to be a little bit more open, and I keep saying flexible, but flexible with my goals and plans, because I know that you can't plan for everything, you can't predict everything, and sometimes things work out better than you could have planned. That sounds so cliche, but it's so true. A lot of things in my life I could never have planned, but it doesn't mean the plan itself wasn't relevant or important. It got me on the right path. It pushed me into the right direction, but I can't control the outcome, is what I'm saying. I can do all I can to make sure I'm heading in the right direction, but I have to be okay with the outcome, because it is outside of my control. It feels so weird to do a little short podcast, because I do 1-hour podcasts for my patrons, my Patreon, every second week. So if you want way more of a ramble, you can join me on there. I will leave a link to that below, but I'm hoping these short podcasts every week, I'm aiming for weekly, will help bridge the gap between Patreon and my studio vlogs. I want something in between so I can talk to you guys more, because you guys know that I'm not very good with Instagram. So that's a story for another day, but I'm going to leave it here. Thank you so much for joining me for my first podcast episode, and I look forward to seeing any of your questions. We'll figure this out as we go. This probably will not look the same a month from now, but that's all part of the journey. So I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next week.